All right, today we are going to learn to make homemade egg noodles, just like Grandma used to make. So we're going to need 3 ingredients. This is 1 cup of flour, some salt, and an egg. So really all we're going to do is we're going to combine these together and make a dough. So we start with whichever you want. You can start with the egg, you can start with salt, whatever you want. You know, I don't put a ton of salt in, but I put a little in for some flavor. And this grinds really, really thick or really coarse. So we're gonna get a spoon out. We're gonna start with 1 tablespoon cold water. Just 1 tablespoon of water. I'm just gonna mix it. We're only gonna add water as we need it. You may, depending, you may need more than 1 tablespoon. You may need 2, you may need 3. Just depends on how dry your flour is, I guess. Or how big your tablespoons are. So just kind of mix them around till we get, looks like I might need a 3rd one, and that's okay. It's not coming together in a ball yet. We're just gonna keep adding a little bit of water, tablespoon and a tablespoon. You don't want to add too much because you don't want your dough to be super sticky. But this, keep adding until you get it to come and form into a dough ball. Gonna add 1 more. See that 1 more, just got it just moist enough so it starts forming a dough ball here. Stuck on my fork, and my hands are clean. Just wash them. So typically I just start with my hands. I just start mixing it up. Just getting it nice dough ball form. I want it just a tad bit sticky, and it needs, I'm up about half a tablespoon in. So I want it just a tiny bit stickier than that. Not too sticky. Get it too sticky, just add more flour. It's not the end of the world. I mean, these are country style noodles. So we're just gonna ball it up and get about a handful like that. And that's gonna make a lot of noodles. It doesn't look like it's gonna make a lot of noodles, but I promise you that it will. You wanna make sure your hands are dry. Even though you're gonna wash them, keep them clean. You wanna make sure they're dry because you don't wanna keep adding too much moisture to these little guys here. So we're going to get our rolling pin. And this is not my new one. So I'm gonna find what happened to my new one. I have a brand new one that I just bought because my kids took my other one outside and was playing in the sandbox with it. I was like, why do you have my rolling pin? Oh, so anyway, so that rolling pin could stand to go in the trash. So I get some parchment paper out. And the reason I do this is because I don't want to roll these, because I have tile countertops. I don't want to roll these on the tile countertops because it helps if this parchment paper, it really helps if it's just slightly damp. And you can see it's a little wet right there. It'll hold the parchment paper down, but it doesn't really come through to mess up your dough ball here. One thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna take some flour We're going to put it down, which is why we want it to be just slightly sticky, because you're going to put extra flour down. This flour here is to keep your rolling pin from sticking, and we're going to roll some flour on this rolling pin because we don't want our noodles to stick to it. So we're going to generously coat that. And then I don't leave the big ball of flour. I just put just a little bit. And so then what we're going to do, flatten out our dough ball here. We've got it nice and mixed up. We're going to flatten out our dough ball. Coat your hands with flour so you don't stick to your dough ball. Roll it out. See, not enough flour, so it's stuck. That's okay. I'm just going to get that off of it, because the more it sticks, the more it will stick. So we're going to roll it out. And some people use the handles. I don't always use the handles. I probably should just buy one without handles. So this dough, we're going to roll it very thin. And the reason you want to roll it thin is because when you actually put it in the water or in your soup, whatever you're cooking it in, this will puff up about 2 times the thickness that you actually put it in the pot as. So you want it to be thin. So as thin as you can get it. And then of course I'll peel it up. Make sure it's not sticking. Oh, it is sticking, so that's okay. But you're getting there. A little bit stuck. Not the end of the world. We can recover. Not enough flour. That's what that means. Yeah, you didn't put enough flour down. It's all right. It will pick that back up, so we're not worried about it. We're going to flour that over. We're going to put more flour, flipping it. We're flipping it is what we're doing. We're trying to do. Because we want more flour. Which is why it was okay that it was slightly sticky. Because you're going to keep adding some flour to it. And again, you know, it's just going to, you're going to thin it out. It's a little bit long for that direction. We're going to flip it. You know, this process, if you have one of those fancy noodle makers, you go right ahead and use your fancy noodle maker. I don't have a fancy noodle maker. My grandmother didn't have a fancy noodle maker. My mother didn't have a fancy noodle maker. You know what? It turned out just fine. Okay. Peel it up one more time. Flip it again. Now it's getting thin, so now it's, as it thins out, you'll see some of the, it spreads out. It doesn't attach. You know, you lose some of your flour that way. And so where you lost flour is where it's going to stick. I'm going to use a little bit more flour in those areas that it's stuck. And we're just going to keep rolling it. And again, it doesn't look like a lot, but I promise you, I have a family of 4. This is going to feed us for, probably give us, with the soup and the chicken and all that, I'm going to give my husband a couple lunches and feed us all 4 for dinner. So you can see how thin that is. And again, flip it, flour it. Flip it and flour it. Flip it and flour it. Peel it off of here. Unfold it. flip it. And everywhere that it's kind of yellowy, that's where you know you don't have enough flour. And again, you know, it's a process. That's why Grandma's noodles always tasted so good, because she went through the process. You know, I'm sure you can get the same noodles if you use one of those machines, but I don't use one. So, super duper thin. You want a non-serrated knife or cookie, or you could use a pizza cutter. I don't have a pizza cutter. I don't have sharp knives either, so. All right, so I'm just gonna flatten it out here. This gives me, we'll pull these off. We'll still use those, but we'll have to roll them out again. Okay. All right, so here we've got our little our little sheet of dough. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it. Let's just cut that straight. And we'll use that later. Pull that off of there. We'll make sure our dough's not sticking. So want to peel it up. Sticking just a little bit. Again, not enough flour, and that happens to all of us, so it is what it is. Flip it over like that. Not a big deal. This side still feels a little thick, so I'm just going to roll it out just a little thinner. Bit more flour over here. Too sticky over there. All right, well, let's pull this up. I'm gonna throw a little bit of flour down there because I don't want these to stick once I cut them, because then that's gonna be a mess. That's where you mostly don't want them to stick, is once you get your sheet out like this, you don't want anything to stick. It's gonna be really hard to pull up those little thin noodles. So the number one thing, people want to cut their noodles like this. You know, no, you want to cut these noodles, and you want to cut them as thin. You want to cut them thin, just like that, thin. Set them to the side. I'm gonna flour up my knife a little bit, and you're gonna cut these noodles super. You can cut them maybe a 1/4 inch wide. And you can just stick them over here. At this point, they're floured enough. You can just ball them up and it's fine. So yeah, that's what I do. I just super thin, because these are gonna double, at least double in size once they hit the pot. And that is a major key to not having those big doughy noodles, is to make sure you cut them 1/4 inch thick, no bigger than a 1/4 inch thick. Like I said, the thicker they are, the doughier they're gonna be. And these are gonna puff up and be those beautiful home style egg noodles that Grandma used to make. You know, at least my country grandma used to make, my mama used to make. So, you know, maybe you have an Italian grandma who made her homemade pasta. This is kind of along the same lines of that, except for pasta and country egg noodles are not really the same. I mean, they don't taste the same. You don't put them in the same kind of, you know, sauces. I mean, this is just going to be in a homemade chicken noodle soup. that I'm making. And see, I got a little thick there. My knife's not real sharp, which is good for me because, like I said, I'll cut myself. My kids love these noodles. So I'm gonna cut these up, and then I'll come back and show you what they look like, kind of all cut up. And then we'll start putting them in our soup and show you what that looks like. Okay, so here's our noodles. I laid them all out. Try to dry them just a little bit. You don't want to, so this is kind of how thick they are. They're very thin this way. And they're very thin, you know, they're cut 1/4 of an inch, about 1/4 inch. You know, of course they'll vary, but so these are all of our noodles, and I laid them out here on some clean parchment paper just to kind of dry just a little bit and just kind of get some extra moisture off of them. So just air dry them 15-20 minutes is really all I do. I mean, these are country noodles, like I said. This is not pasta, this is country noodles. So this is kind of how we do it. We just let them dry for a little bit. They don't have to get hard, don't sit overnight. These do have egg in them, so you don't want to leave them out too long. You want to make sure you keep your hands cleaned. So we're going to transfer over to the stove, and I'm going to show you what they look like, what I have put together for the actual chicken and vegetables, because we're going to make chicken vegetable noodle soup, and kind of show you what that looks like. And then we'll start putting these in once I get that all back to boiling, because it's been on simmer, so it's not super hot yet. But your water should be hot, if not boiling. It doesn't have to be boiling, but it should be very hot when these go in, because they will start to cook the minute they go in the water, and you want to put them in just a few at a time, so it takes a little bit of time. So if you threw this whole thing in there just like this is what's going to cook. It's going to become a lump. So you want to put, and I just kind of take a few at a time, and I just kind of drop them, and as they drop, they start to cook and they don't stick together. So that's kind of the key to these, because they are wet. They aren't totally dry like dried grocery store egg noodles. And here's what we've got going in there. Oh, and it's a little steamy. You guys can't see it. Yeah, I steamed up my camera because I'm a little too close. So anyway, I'll show you with the spoon. So it'll probably be easier. You grab a ladle here. I don't even need a ladle, we'll use this. So I'll just show you what's in here. So just to kind of show you what's in here, we've got, and I used canned vegetables for this. I didn't use fresh vegetables for this. I just used what I had, and canned was what I had. So I've got carrots and green beans and peas and corn. And, you know, if you want to put potatoes in here, you can put potatoes in here. And then I just cooked all of this. First, I started cooking my chicken. So I cooked my chicken here. And all I did to cook my chicken was that I put it in this pot, and I poured chicken stock on top of it, and then about a cup and a half of water. And I threw a bouillon cube in there because I like it a little bit extra. So I put a whole thing of chicken stock in here. I put, and it's just steaming up because it's hot. And then I threw the frozen chicken breast in and cooked it till it was done. Once the chicken breast was hot up to a boiling temperature, then I put the vegetables in. I did not put the vegetables in with the frozen chicken. I got the chicken hot first, and this is how I chicken breast in there. Cooked it till it was hot, or this pot was boiling, and then I put my canned vegetables in. And then cooked that for about 45 minutes with my seasoning. And my seasoning, I used, again, this chicken grilling seasoning that I really like. I used a little bit of salt and pepper in there, and then a little bit of garlic powder. So that's what I put in here. And then so we're just going to add back I shredded the chicken in it, and we're going to start putting our noodles in here. And the noodles are going to thicken all this up, and it's not going to be a super soupy soup. It's not going to have a lot of liquid in it, because the noodles are going to soak some of that up, but it's going to be a thicker chicken noodle soup. So let's get our noodles over here. And as you can hear, I have a little songbird over here singing about potatoes because she's playing in the potato bin. I can put this over here enough so you can see. And so I just take a few and just start dropping them in. I mean, these are, we call them egg drop noodles, I guess. And you're literally just gonna start dropping them in and dropping them around the pot so that they're not all balled up in one place. And as they hit the pot, they are instantly gonna start cooking because they have that egg in them. But you want them to be separated out. So I will let it in there for a few minutes, and then I'll I'll kind of go around the pot. And then by the time I get back to the other side, those should be cooked enough for me to put noodles on top of. Let them sit for a second, and I want to make sure these start to cook before I put the rest in. You can see all the ones that are already in there are nice and starting to cook, and so they're not breaking apart. They're holding their shapes. Let's put some more in there. Get that one down in. It didn't get in the pot. Yummy. It's gonna fog up again. But our yummy chicken noodle, ooh, look at that. It's gonna be good. Okay. So I'm gonna let that cook for a little bit, get those noodles nice and done. And then we'll come back and we will take a look at what this looks like when it's completed and what those noodles look like. So, all right.